Marcus hadn't worn a tie in 3 years. The last time was at his wife's funeral, and he'd stuffed it into the back of the closet the moment he got home, telling himself he'd never need it again. But here he was, standing in the bathroom mirror at 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, fumbling with a Windsor knot because his daughter's teacher deserved his best effort, even if his best effort lately felt like it was held together with tape and stubbornness. Emma was 7 now. 7 years old, missing her front tooth, obsessed with butterflies, and apparently struggling with reading comprehension in ways that worried her teacher enough to request a private meeting during parent-teacher night. Marcus had read the note 3 times. Each time his chest tightened a little more. Not because Emma was failing, but because he was terrified he was the reason why. A grieving father raising a grieving daughter, both of them learning how to breathe again in a house that still smelled faintly of her mother's perfume. He grabbed his jacket, kissed Emma on the forehead where she sat with her babysitter, and drove to Riverside Elementary with his hands gripping the wheel like the road might disappear beneath him. If you believe in kindness and second chances, please give this video a like, drop a comment, and subscribe to the channel Kindness. We'd love to know where in the world you're watching from. Now, let's get back to Marcus. The school hallways were loud with the organized chaos of 100 parents shuffling between classrooms, clutching coffee cups and trying to look like they had everything under control. Marcus felt the familiar ache of doing this alone. Every table had 2 chairs on the parent side. He always only needed one. He found room 14 at the end of the hall and knocked on the door that stood slightly open. A voice from inside said, "Come in, please," and Marcus stepped through. She was standing at the whiteboard erasing something, her back turned. She wore a simple navy dress and her dark hair was pulled back the way it used to be in college. The way he'd always told her made her look serious and kind at the same time. Something about the curve of her shoulder, the way she turned slowly with a polite smile already forming on her face, made Marcus's entire body stop functioning. The smile froze on her face, too. "Marcus," she whispered. He couldn't speak. 14 years collapsed into a single second. Diane Cho, who used to bring him soup when he was sick during finals week. Diane Cho, who laughed at his terrible jokes and cried at every movie they watched together. Diane Cho, who he'd loved completely and lost quietly when life pulled them in different directions after graduation, before he could ever figure out the right words to ask her to stay. "Diane," he finally managed, You're Emma's teacher?" She blinked, steadying herself, professional instincts kicking in even as her eyes stayed wide and soft with something he couldn't quite name. "I am," she said. "Please, sit down. I'm sorry. I had no idea. The name on the file just said Mr. Calloway." He sat. She sat across from him. For a moment, neither of them said anything about the 14 years sitting quietly between them like a third person at the table. Diane opened the folder in front of her and began talking about Emma. About how bright she was, how imaginative, how she drew butterflies in the margins of every worksheet. But also how she sometimes went quiet in the middle of reading aloud, like she'd lost the thread, not of the story, but of something inside herself. Diane spoke gently, carefully, and Marcus noticed she never once made him feel like he'd failed. "She told me her mom is in heaven," Diane said softly, looking up. She said it very matter-of-factly, like she'd practiced saying it until it stopped hurting. "Kids do that." She paused. "How long?" 2 years, Marcus said. "Ovarian cancer, 18 months from diagnosis to—" He stopped. Even now, he couldn't always finish that sentence. Emma was 5. Diane's eyes filled. She didn't look away. She didn't offer hollow words or tilt her head with practiced sympathy. She just looked at him like she was really seeing him. And that, somehow, was the thing that almost broke him open right there in the little plastic chair. "She's going to be okay," Diane said. "Emma is one of the most emotionally intelligent children I have ever taught, and I can see she has a father who shows up." Her voice was quiet but steady. "That matters more than you know." Marcus exhaled something that had been sitting in his chest for months. They talked for another 20 minutes, about reading strategies, about journaling, about a butterfly project Diane wanted to do with the class that she thought Emma would love. And when other parents knocked and it was time for him to leave, Marcus stood and shook her hand like a man remembering he was supposed to be formal. "It's really good to see you," he said. "Genuinely. You too," she said, and she meant it. He could tell. He drove home thinking about her the entire way. What Marcus didn't know, what he would only learn weeks later, through Emma of all people, was that Diane Cho wasn't just a second-grade teacher at Riverside Elementary. Emma came home one afternoon buzzing with news. "Daddy, did you know Miss Cho used to be the boss of a whole big company?" Jalen's mom told my teacher and I heard it in the hallway. Like the actual boss. Marcus looked up from the stove. "What do you mean, Bug?" "Like a CEO, Emma announced proudly, clearly having practiced the word. "That's like the king of a company, right?" Marcus set down the spoon. He looked it up that night after Emma went to sleep. It didn't take long. Diane Cho had been the CEO of Luminary Tech, a healthcare data company she'd founded at 31 that had grown into a $250 million enterprise. She'd been on magazine covers. She'd given a TED Talk. She'd sold the company 4 years ago and then, according to the last few articles, had quietly stepped away from the industry entirely. The most recent result he found was a small profile in a local paper from 18 months ago. The headline read, "Former tech CEO trades boardroom for classroom. This is where I belong." The article was only 4 paragraphs long. In it, Diane said she'd spent a decade building something that looked successful from the outside and felt hollow from the inside. She said she got her teaching certificate during the year after she sold the company. She said she took the job at Riverside because a friend had told her it was a school full of kids who needed someone to believe in them. She took a teacher's salary, in the same zip code as her former corporate office. Marcus read the article twice. Then he sat in the quiet of his kitchen for a long time, thinking about what it meant to walk away from everything the world told you was the point, and to choose something true instead. He thought about a girl who used to bring him soup during finals week. He thought about how she'd looked at Emma's file like every child in it mattered completely. He saw her again at the butterfly release. Diane had organized it for the whole 2nd grade. Each child had raised a painted lady butterfly from a tiny caterpillar over 6 weeks, and on a bright Friday morning in April, they all stood in the schoolyard with little mesh enclosures, ready to let them go. Emma was nearly vibrating with excitement. When the moment came, she opened her enclosure and the butterfly climbed onto her finger first, sitting there for just a second longer than it needed to, long enough for Emma to gasp, long enough for Marcus to take a photo, long enough for Diane, standing a few feet away, to catch his eye over all those small upturned faces. She smiled, a real one, not the careful professional smile from room 14, the one he remembered from a long time ago. He walked over when the chaos of the release had settled into laughing children chasing butterflies across the yard. "That was a pretty amazing thing you did," he said. 6 weeks, for 2nd graders. "They earned it," she said simply. "Every single one of them." He looked at her. "I read about you," he admitted. "Luminary Tech, the TED Talk. All of it." She glanced down briefly, then back up. "And I think you're the same person you always were," he said. "I think you just finally found the right place to be her." Diane was quiet for a moment. Across the yard, Emma was showing another little girl how to hold her hand flat so a butterfly would land. The sun was warm and the air smelled like cut grass. "I missed something," Diane said finally. "For a long time I chased the version of success that looked good in a press release, and I was good at it, but I was never full." She paused. "When I'm in that classroom, I'm full." Marcus nodded slowly. "I know that feeling," he said. "Not from success, but from Emma, from just being her dad, even when it's the hardest thing I've ever done." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the children, watching the butterflies drift over the schoolyard fence into the wide spring sky. "Maybe we could get coffee sometime," he said. "Just to catch up, no pressure." She looked at him and smiled, again, quiet, warm, unhurried, the smile of someone who had learned that the best things don't need to be rushed. "I'd like that," she said. Emma ran over at that exact moment and crashed into Marcus's side, butterfly wild and beaming. "Daddy, did you see? She stayed on my finger the longest." "I saw Bug," he said, wrapping an arm around her. "She chose you." Emma looked up at Miss Cho. "Did you see it too?" "I did," Diane said, crouching down to Emma's level. She knew exactly where she belonged. And standing there in the April sunshine, between his daughter's laughter and the soft look in Diane's eyes, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in 2 very long years. Not healed, not yet, but on his way. Finally, unmistakably, on his way. If this story moved you, please give it a like, share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness and second chances are real, and subscribe to the channel Kindness, because stories like this one are why we're here. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. We read every single one.